Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to Business is Boring. This season, we're talking to people who exemplify some of the best things about business as I've seen them. And today, we're joined by Steve Zinsli, the founder and CEO at Extraordinary. And this is someone who I've been lucky enough to work on a branding project with and also invest in through Brand Fund. And so I've got to know pretty well in the work that he does to be a category creator. And so today we're going to be chatting a little bit about the Extraordinary journey and about what it takes to actually create a category. What that kind of means is there's not currently a bunch of incumbents doing the thing. You've got to educate the market about the value of the new thing you're bringing, which is hard. Things that people aren't aware of and aren't looking for take longer to kind of get the energy behind and get people understanding. But if you can create your own category, the rewards are massive because you kind of compete on your own term and you become the byword for the thing. So to chat a little bit about what's involved in that, what Extraordinary is, and the journey so far, Steven Zinsli joins us now. Tanakwe, thank you for being here.
Hey, Simon. Super good to be here. And I loved the if you can create your own category comment.
I'm backing you, man. You're gonna be creating it for sure.
Straight in the pressure.
So first up, your first forays into this world started with quite an interest in the health and well-being space, eh? Tell us about where you started out.
I think like most businesses or founders, you break it down to one of the 3 Ps, or in my case, all of them. So you've got pain, passion, and profession. And so I grew up in a low socioeconomic household. My parents didn't have a bunch of cash because of a number of different reasons. They had kids young. My dad was in the Navy, so he was away a lot, which meant that my mum was, took the home role and played, the part-time solo parent, as she liked to word it. And then there was situations specifically around health where events happened where we needed potentially like the A&E and we couldn't afford to pay the after-hour medical payments. And so that's where my passion for health, or, the second P, passion for health and equity of health started. Then went on to go and do or work in healthcare. So built a healthcare business with another guy, which we scaled to 15 clinics, about 120 staff across 6 disciplines, which was super fun and awesome. Learned a lot about brick and mortar businesses, how to build a business, how to employ staff. Made a bunch of mistakes, as most founders do. And then started to kind of think about how I could use technology to break past the boundaries of what a brick and mortar business kind of limits you with. You can't with brick and mortar, you can't infinitely scale. There's lots of people that you can't reach because they're not where you need them to be able to come to your clinic, so to speak. And so then went on the journey of Health Now, which was a tech play to be able to make healthcare more affordable and more accessible. Initially, we built a health-specific buy now, pay later solution, like Afterpay for health, essentially. Again, really fun, learnt lots of things, scaled it quite successfully. We had about 18,000 users on that platform, but then learnt a lot of interesting challenges around managing a multi participant marketplace, and then essentially got to this place where we thought that it wasn't the right business to keep going with because of cost of capital constraints, among other things. And so we wanted to continue to go down that path of affordability and accessibility and making it easier for people to receive the things that they needed. And so we realized that there was a place for us to be able to build the distribution strategy or distribution tool for allowances, health allowances. Lots of companies were doing health allowances. They wanted to support their employees with health and well-being. But the way that they were doing it was really, really shit. Not sure if I'm allowed to
Yeah,
use
yeah,
that
no,
language
go
on
for
this.
it.
Sweet.
Get us an explicit label on
Yeah, yeah.
iTunes.
Well, it was terrible,
Yeah.
right? Like you had to use reimbursable approaches and you'd have to spend your own money and then wait a number of weeks. What if you didn't have the money to be able to afford the thing in the first place? So like by and large or by nature, like using a reimbursable model wasn't meeting the needs of every single person in your organization. And so we moved from, we closed that BNPL part of our business and went down the path of distributing health and wellbeing allowances. And that was our first foray to the payment card. And then as the story goes, we ended up getting a number of customers on board with that payment card. And then once our organizations, well, this is one part of the story, but once these organizations had these payment cards in hand, they were like, hey, like we've got these cards. There's all of these other forms of distributions that we need to be able to get into the hands of our employees. What are your thoughts about us being able to use that payment card, that controllable payment card that you've built to do these other things? And then there was another component where when we were having conversations with customers, we were getting this feedback that, you know, we don't do health allowances, but we do commuting allowances, we do food allowances, we do this, that, and the other thing. And it kind of just, you know, again, like this is the third P of profession. When you're actually doing the thing, you start to see the things that need to be changed. And then it kind of just came to fruition that we came to this realization and then fruition that we needed to change and we needed to be the tool that could manage all forms of these extra different payments, which obviously then led to you and I having that long conversation around what are these extra payments, and then you and I came to the conclusion that all of these extraordinary payments were exactly that. They were extraordinary payments, and we needed to make them extraordinary and simple and efficient and easy, and here we are today.
Yeah, and yeah, what you described there, like the extraordinary payment thing, like it's a real concept, right? That organizations have ordinary payments, and this is like an accounting term where that's your wages or your salary or something, stuff that you pay every week and is part of your tax, and it's very ordinary. And then there's an accounting term, which is extraordinary payments, which is anything that isn't that. But although that exists as a term and accountants know it, it's not widely known, right? Although if you explain it to people, they get it pretty quickly. But right now, there has never been any kind of platform to allow every employee or person who works with an organization or as part of an organization to have a card in their own account to handle these kind of extraordinary payments. Like in the past,
they use lots of different things. You know, they've got gift cards for corporate gifting or reward and recognition, which, you know, have a number of interesting and frankly really weird challenges that I don't know how we've got to this place where we've kind of just accepted that that's the norm. And then you've got organizations doing reimbursements. You've got literally upfront payments into payroll where there's no kind of management or like traceability on how funds are spent. So it's essentially just like a bonus. But then, you know, the companies are trying to put policy guidelines around these payments rather than, you know, using a tool, a single cost center, which has all of those capabilities baked into it.
Yeah. Or there might be like, if you think about how lots of workplaces work, a few people might have a corporate credit card, and then they might be the people who are tasked with paying for the work drinks or the birthday shower or buying the work boots for someone or, you know, doing all of these kind of, you know, getting the petty cash stuff. But there's no kind of, it's one person, it's not linked to the individual people and to the things that they're doing. So it's this really weird situation where there's heaps of use cases, but no common platform. And that's like, how did you come to kind of discover that, like customer pull as much as anything else?
Yeah. So that's that profession P, right? Or one of our other shareholders, which you know well, Barnaby, refers to it as time on the ball. It's like once you've kind of been doing the things and you have the hundreds and thousands of conversations that any founder has as they're building their business with their customer base or with the people that are actually using their product, you start to really uncover all of these different problems. And for us, as we started to move up market, so to speak, from I've got this other line I like to say, which is, you got to swallow the fly to then swallow the spider to swallow the cat. To, as you move up through the ranks, you start with small businesses and you understand their challenges, and then you realize you go to mid-market and they're not the same problems that the small business has, and then you end up in where we are now, in enterprise, working with, ASB or the Australian Gov contract we've just gone live with, and they've got really interesting and different problems again. And so as you're kind of having those different conversations, you have to adjust the product, or you uncover the different extraordinary payments, and subsequently, which is probably becoming more and more important to us as a business, what do they do with those extraordinary payments from a tax and compliance perspective after they're actually, like, the funds are moved? Like, movement of funds really, really efficiently is, and making it easy and accessible for the employee is obviously one key component for the HR and the people and culture team. But then you get past HR and people and culture, and you've got the financial controller and the tax manager being like, we're moving all this money. What do we? How are we putting it into the right part of our P&L? And so that's time on the ball, all those chats, and then obviously just having like the probably like the ability to think through like the feedback you're getting and actually just take it on board and potentially realize that what you thought was going to be true in your initial thesis statement or your hypothesis is potentially not true.
And that's a great point, because being open to, there's a lot of things that a founder needs to do that's kind of harder than normal life, right? But one thing is you got to be really confident and sell something, but then that's new. But then you've also got to be open enough to your idea not being right, that you're able to change and follow the market. And that's not easy for everyone. I remember because we were working with you in the change from Health Now, and you're still going to be mainly in the health and wellbeing space, helping big companies more efficiently help their employees spend their health and wellbeing budgets, whatever it might be. And then we got to the end of making a whole new brand linked to that idea. And then we had the chat and you're like, oh man, we've just understood that there's this way bigger opportunity.
Yeah, throw it away.
we have to completely throw it away. And I was like, okay, well, it'd be nice not to throw this away. I'm sure we can make it work. And then after a few more conversations, I was like, no, you're 100% right. We got to throw this away. And so then we had to completely rebase it and come up with this kind of extraordinary concept and brand, which I reckon is a way better result in the end, right?
Oh, 100%, man. And the fact that we did it in such a short space of time as well, I don't think it's ever been spoken about publicly, but what was it, like 4 weeks?
It was from where to go. After we'd spent like 3 months making the first brand. So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, but a real push. And then I think, part of this thing is when you're making a new category and a new use case and have to help people understand a new thing, you got to go through all of the phases of like awareness to consideration to from a standing start, because there's nothing
the
that you
curve
can.
Sucks. It's really, really, or the law of diffusion of innovation is long, and it's hard, and it costs. It's costs like a lot of money, right? Because to your point, if no one really knows what that thing is yet. And in our instance, it's partially an experiential product. It's not until you've actually like moved from the shitty old way of doing it where, maybe you were paying too much and you didn't even know that you were paying anything because that breakage value wasn't displayed to you, or there was a bunch of administrative burden in your business to distribute the money, and then, you've got to actually see the new thing. It's like, I can't remember the podcast I was listening to the other day, but it's like, would you ever go back to having a CD player now that you've got like Spotify? No way. Like, would you ever go back to running down to the shop to like rent DVDs now that you've got Netflix or Disney?
Like, whenever you have to call up a taxi, you're like, oh man, I'm so happy Uber exists.
Yeah. Rory Sutherland, that's the podcast. That totally right. And it's like in our product. Would you ever go back, let's just look at corporate gifting as one thread and then we'll move through threads. It's like corporate gifting. Would you ever send an EA down to the shop to go and pay up front for a piece of plastic or many pieces of plastic, which they then have to bring back to the business to distribute, when now you have the ability to click 3 buttons on on a platform and money hits the person instantly, and it's on a co-branded company card.
Well, let's go into that Prezi card thing, because that's something that's kind of blown my mind, because there's a few major planks for what this replaces, right? Like it replaces...
Let's just go to gift cards because we're not...
Yeah, but like it replaces reimbursements.
Yeah.
It replaces, putting extra money into people's accounts. And in a big way, it replaces gift cards. And gift cards suck, right? Like, as you say, you pay it all up front. You got to physically give them to people. There's no tracking.
Sweat beads drip down my face.
There's no
record this.
And also there's a massive breakage. And I don't think people even recognize how much this breakage is, right? And breakage means the money that's not spent at the end of the card. And their business model relies on this, right?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, they can come forward after they watch this if they want to correct anything I've said here. But from everything that I've read and the information that you're able to kind of pull from this data, it is 100% they rely on it. And the question that I've started to ask myself is show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome, right? If your incentive structure is to not have money be spent because you make more money when money is not spent, you innately approach the onboarding experience, the reminding of how much money there's on the card experience, the go and spend the money experience. You approach it very, very differently when your incentive is for it not to be spent. Whereas, with a product like ours where we don't have a relationship with money that's not spent because we don't charge for it and we don't keep it, then we approach utilization as a really, really good thing. And so just to kind of flesh out, those numbers, I read a Hansard transcript from the Fair Trading gift card amendment bill, and they were talking about numbers in the hundreds of millions not being spent. You go and look at some data in the US and they're talking about 24 billion, I think was the number that I saw on gift cards that's not spent, that just disappears when funds expire. You go and look at, and this is one of the good companies that actually reports on it, because lots of them don't report on it. They hide it in their balance sheet in conspicuous ways. But you go and look at Starbucks and they've got $1.7 billion of unspent gift cards sitting on their balance sheet right now. And last year they reported $182+ million that they netted as profit from gift cards that expired. There's copious amounts of money that organizations are distributing through these tools where the economic beneficiary is profiting off money that's not spent. And I'm just it's just crazy. How have we got to that point? And obviously, again, it's because there wasn't another way to distribute money. And it's all good. It's been a great business model. Everyone's made lots of money. I'm sure they're stoked. But there's a future where I think we can, specifically us even, there's a future where I think that industry is ripe for a little bit of disruption, where we can make it a bit fairer to the distributors, especially in the corporate space.
Amazing. And just before we finish up this first part, what stage are you at now with the company? What kind of reach do you have currently? And then we'll come back in the next part and talk about how you got there and where you're going next.
Yeah. So first card ever to be printed was on, I think it was the 14th of January, 2024. So we're just over 12 months into our journey, and we're also we're into our what we refer to as our buying window. We're in our second buying window now, right? Because companies tend to make a decision on us within that end of fiscal cycle period for how they're going to distribute funds for the next fiscal calendar year. And then obviously there's also a number of different fiscal cycles depending on which country you're talking about. New Zealand, 31 March, 1st April, and then Australia, 30 June. And then for whatever reason, retail also does it differently. So really interesting learnings in that space for anyone that relates. But yeah, we're up to 152 corporate clients now. And then we've also got a number of really, really awesome deals that we're kind of on the precipice of. I mentioned to you just as we walked in here, noting that the release of this hopefully will be a week or two away from today. Because it hasn't been. Next
Tuesday morning?
Next Tuesday, okay, sweet. I'll make sure our public announcement is live before then. But we just signed a major deal with an insurance company this morning to manage the distributions of one of their policies across their RSE worker space, So that's all of these folks that are coming from the islands that historically had to do a pay and then claim process, and then now their policy is going to be sitting on a payment card for them, so they can walk in, tap, walk out, and no out-of-pocket payment. So, lots for us to do. Like 152 companies isn't obviously massive, but we're psyched with how many companies and just the caliber. You've got like ASB, we've got the local government in Port Hedland in Australia, we've got Swiss Nutrition, we've got the Financial Markets Authority used us to do a bunch of their corporate gifting. Like, how many startups get to say that they've got tier one customers like that 12 months or just over 12 months after launching their first ever payment card? So we think, again, ripe opportunity. It's a big opportunity. There's a lot of space, and now it's just about really kind of defining how to create the category, I guess, and how to market it and use this beautiful brand in like a really meaningful way globally.
Well, let's come back in a moment and talk about how you do go about creating a category. Hey, so talking about how you make a category, right? Like, when no one knows what it is in the first instance, having to do that education and awareness piece takes a lot of energy, a lot of positivity. Like if people, to keep going from people not knowing to knowing takes a lot of, it's almost like a sales mission, right? Like,
bro, it's so hard.
10 messages before it gets through or something.
Yeah.
And a lot of persistence, right? And so tell us a little bit about how you think about establishing this new idea and getting it out into the world. What kind of stuff do you have to do?
Yeah, I'll just quickly on that persistence piece. Like, we have in our organization, I think within our shareholder base too, we have a lot of belief in what we're doing, that there is a significant problem to solve, right? So that's kind of what fuels the fire to be able to go down this journey and just push the boundaries of acceptance around how long and how much money how long is it going to take, how much money are we going to spend. And we know eventually that there is going to be that lift-off moment where, we just go from reasonably known now, I would say, to very, very well known and accepted as the only mechanism that an organization should use to distribute funds. What was the question? How do you go about category creation?
How do we go about getting people to understand that first?
Yeah.
And what kind of activity do you do?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people listening would have seen the activity on LinkedIn, which is like a great first place. Maybe seen you at a conference. There's a real kind of energy and vibe to what you do.
Yeah,
there.
Totally. And I think, as I said prior, and reflecting on, some of the businesses that we would look up to, like the Uber or the Netflix, in our instance, again, it's an experiential product. So we have to be out there. We have to be kind of showing the experiences that we're creating, whether it's ease of use for the card holder that's now able to spend money or receive money in a different way, or whether it's the ease of distribution for the HR person, or, yesterday I spoke about an integration with another one of our partners, Tax Lab, to make it easier for tax teams to be able to do the thing. You've got to kind of show how you're going to make life better, and not just talk about it, but physically show them. So then they've got that belief there. Because again, if that thing hasn't existed before, and then now you're saying to them, all of these problems are going to miraculously just go away, it's like, that's too good to be true. Or there's that consideration of, is this too good to be true? But once you show them and they can tangibly see and experience it, then those kind of concerns will go away. What else do I think? I mean, category, the next layer would be, the keeping up with the Joneses concept, lots of social proof. We constantly post about or talk about the companies we work with, and we're building much more kind of capability around getting those customer stories, both collecting them, but then getting them out there into the public and trying to build raving fans that want to talk about our product. We've got, as I was mentioning to you earlier, and we're talking about the jumper giveaway that I did, you have like 100+ people in the LinkedIn comments asking for a jumper, and they're all like customers or people that are close to the brand. And so it's, people that are following the brand, have used the brand, have built this layer of love for the brand almost as much as we would love it, and I would say, which then helps us further get it out there. But there's still, this is an area I'm learning a lot about and spending a lot of time like trying to learn about it, as again, what I mentioned earlier, watching and learning lots of the work that like Ogilvy will put out or Rory Sutherland puts out as psychological or behavioral theorists around how to actually get behavior change, and then looking at ways to be able to test and implement those strategies quickly and cheaply in some instances, to make sure that we can work out what ones work and what ones don't for our business specifically. And I think the next layer, just to kind of build on that, which we haven't worked out yet, which is, what works in New Zealand might not be the same thing that works in Australia, might not be the same thing that works in America, and just acknowledging that there will be new learnings and to not go blindly into new markets.
Mm. And those big hero customers are a huge part of it, right? Like, it's almost like there's a banking element to this where you've given everyone their own account and then you can deposit money in it and track how it's spent and report on it.
But we're not a bank.
But you're not a bank. Yeah. And, the fact that you can so quickly provision everyone with a digital card and be able to do these things is remarkable. And the best proof that you're able to do this at great speed is that a bank would choose you. That's absolutely amazing. It's so good. In terms of, your local focus, tell us about it's kind of like if you're starting a movement or a new idea, you've got to do it in a place where you can get enough kind of enough density of people understanding it for it to kind of work and fire, right? And so tell us about kind of building out New Zealand and Australia in the first instance.
Yeah. So I think in our business being fintech, there is another layer which is like compliance and cost and like card provisioning and the relationships that we have with card issuing partners, right? Like if you wanted to tomorrow, hypothetically, be able to issue in every market, it would cost so much money and take so much time that it would almost be a non-starter, like out the gate as a startup, or you would have to just, I don't know how you'd be able to do it, but you'd have to get like hundreds of millions probably to be able to achieve that outcome. And so for us, like to be able to get runs on the board in the local market and prove to our shareholder base that we have the know-how and the capability to be able to take on that global opportunity, that I think there's just a path there. But to your point, the next layer to your point is around probably being just like capital efficient and focused, because for a startup, capital and focus are your most precious resources. You don't have big teams, or in our case, we're up to about 13 now, full-time FTEs. And most of those are in New Zealand, with one now in Australia. You don't have like mega amounts of money. And, we've been probably, in the case of New Zealand businesses, quite effective with our capital raising. And, we've been able to get a good amount of funds to take this challenge. But, again, if we decided to try and distribute focus and capital across many more markets, I think it's just like more risk than reward. Whereas if we're like, we're going to focus on enterprise businesses, intimately understand their problems, spend as much time with these customers, focus our engineering efforts on solving the problems that these customers have, and then almost working in collaboration with them, then, through that journey, you get customers off the back of solving their problems in collaborative manners, and then you build those raving fans, and then you can kind of leapfrog off those businesses laterally within industries or even up the chain. So you think, we've got Constellation Brands in New Zealand. There's no current commitment for them to scale internationally, but that's a big global business. If we can prove to them that we can solve that problem in the local market, why would it not be true that we'd be able to solve that problem in other markets they operate? Same for ASB. We're now talking about what we can do with their big parent company and how we can potentially solve similar problems.
And it's like that the world that comes from extraordinary executing is every employee has an extraordinary account and
an employee card.
So it's not just a few people with like a corporate card. Everyone has an employee card, and anything that's
and it's
in
easy,
the nature of work.
And it's fast. And, you want to send a birthday present to someone instead of, again, running down to the shops. Or, I've heard stories. Let me actually frame out another story. This is like how ridiculous some of these experiences are for companies. There's a business, an Australian New Zealand company, which has 7,000 staff. Every Christmas, they do a Christmas distribution, and they do Woolies cards because, they want people to spend the money on groceries, put it towards Christmas. Historically, they would go and buy 7,000 plastic Woolworths cards, which, for starters, there's a challenge there with the environmental sustainability of that approach. Then the second thing is that they would get a team of people to manually package all of these Woolies cards out into individual envelopes, and then somehow miraculously hope that they all got to the right recipients within, I can't remember how many sites these people were distributed across, but, many, many sites. And it's like, again, how did we get to that being the most efficient approach when it just doesn't make sense? And then now, you've got the ability to just send it via an email. It's
and there are a couple of things that you've worked out to allow this to happen, like being able to control buckets of spend to certain places. Tell us about that, as I think that's probably the unlock that's allowed this to happen, right? Because people didn't want to just give people $100 because they didn't want them to spend it on things they didn't approve or whatever, right? Especially if you're having to track and report on it.
Well, there are, totally. Companies do like the idea of being able to put in place some controls and a bit of governance around spend. And there are also instances where companies want to provide a lot of optionality for the recipient, right? Depending on what the distribution is for. And again, we'll use like a birthday compared to maybe a health and wellbeing or a commuting allowance. For a birthday, if you were historically giving them some money, you probably don't care what they spend their birthday money on. If they want to go down to the liquor shop, totally. We just want you to recognize that as a business, we see you. You're an individual that we care about, and we know it's your birthday, and we want to be there and do something on your birthday and go and do with the money what you please. Whereas if you're, an insurance company or trying to distribute policies through our product, or you're another company doing a health and wellbeing allowance, then you obviously have some views on what health and wellbeing means to your business. And maybe it doesn't mean going down to the liquor shop or to the casino or to spend at a tobacco store. And so you want to put some restrictions to acknowledging that maybe some people listening might say, oh, but that's my well-being. But your company will put some restrictions in place there. So and this is a concept that lots of people in the fintech space will understand and appreciate. You've got merchant category codes plus a bunch of other terminal identifying data. The merchant category code system is kind of this ubiquitously accepted system where when you go and set up a payment terminal with a bank or a merchant account, they provision a code to your terminal which tells the bank what you do, and it supports obviously their compliance requirements. You also get a merchant identifier number or a terminal number. So what we've been able to do with with MasterCard, our partner, and our card issuing partner, we've been able to get all of that data in real time when the transaction takes place, and then return an accept or decline response depending on the plan's provisions that the company has set. So you want to turn on doctor, or dentist. I think dentist is 8021 for one of the category codes. It instantly turns on every single dentist that has that category code. If you want to turn off alcohol stores, I can't remember the code for that one, but you can turn off every single alcohol store. For our commuting allowance that we've built, that we're super excited about, can't talk about it yet because we're waiting for the product ruling to come through, but it'll essentially mean that by Tuesday next week we might actually have it. So watch this space. But for the commuting allowance, you can give money to employees, or in the instance of that product ruling, do a salary sacrifice, which then means that money that's put into that commuting allowance can only be spent with the specific public transport operators you want to allow. So it's definitely an unlock being able to control the cards. But then beyond that, the other unlocks is, again, the UI, the UX, the efficiency, and then the compliance and the tax piece that's built, which at the start we didn't realize how important that was going to be. And speaking openly, we actually used to try and get the system to kind of meet our needs, and we were we're pushing up against this this very firm block wall. What if we just acknowledge how the system needs to operate, and that companies really want to, be as compliant as possible and have as much data as humanly possible within the bounds of obviously the Privacy Act and other such surrounding acts, and then give them that data and make it really easy for them to do their compliance procedure. And then once we did that, it was like, now you go into companies and they're like, yeah, we really want this, because historically, I again heard the story the other day, they would cast the net, so to speak, across all of their managers. And this is an organization with many thousands of people. They would manually trawl through 30,000 transactions to find the transactions that would align to FBT-able expenditures, and have to manually then pull those all into a report. Whereas, now they've just moved to, we've got one cost center, all of the transactions are an extraordinary. We click select period, export the file, and the job's done. And so, again, solving the problem of distribution and removing all of the admin there, but then finding other areas in the business that you can solve the problem for.
What do you think, as a founder, allows you to have this kind of handle on the detail? Like, you've done things like, go to the IRD to try and get a ruling on tax policy in order to add more utility to the product, but also keep that kind of like big picture vision and where you're heading going at the same time. And I guess also something I've observed, the way that you've been able to just keep changing to what you need to change and do, whether that's kind of moving out of having the 15 clinics, turning off the buy now, pay later, this
Darwinism 101, right?
This ability to keep evolving to the bigger opportunity, right?
Yeah. Well, it's you gotta obviously there's two sides to that fence too, right? The first side would be like, you can't keep adapting away from things that are working. If they are working, and if there's obviously an opportunity both that supports economic outcomes of the shareholders that are giving you the cash, but then also impact for the community. But then also you need to recognize the things that aren't additive and then move away from the things that aren't additive. So as I was saying before, Darwinism, adapt or die. And in those certain situations, if we didn't adapt, we probably wouldn't be standing where we are today with the customers that we have today, because the customers that needed the health and wellbeing allowances where the total accessible market was this big or however big. And then now you start talking about all extraordinary payments, and that total accessible market and your relevance is much, much larger.
And how do you manage to maintain the detail? Because anyone who follows you on on LinkedIn will see that some posts are, you having fun with the big card. And then other posts are like a full essay on tax law or the interactions of HR and employee experience. Very, and citing 4 papers, right?
Yeah, well, I think, I don't actually know the answer. I think maybe it's just like how my brain works. I think there's lots of founders that probably have similar kind of relationships with the detail, and I'm obsessed, man. All I think about is how to make this business work and how to kind of solve the problem and how to realize the long-term outcome that I want to see in the world. So if that means that I need to sit down on, I think it was Tuesday last week. If that means I need to sit down on Tuesday last week and read the latest FBT announcement that's like a 72-page document, then, I'll sit there and do that thing, because it's additive to the outcome of our business and it's going to solve problems for our customers and make sure that I can maintain relevance. I also I like learning. I think that there's I'm happiest when I'm learning. I'm happiest when I'm solving really hard problems. And so being able to sit there and I like to think about reading and podcasts, or, the ability to kind of, it's the ability to sit there and a matter of minutes and ingest hours of someone else's work, beyond what you can see on the page, and very short spaces of time, which you're then able to make decisions on. So, why would you not get into the detail?
That's also, and as a thought, for advice for people, what advice would you give people who were trying to make a new category? Because it's quite a buzzword, right? Lots of people are we're going to create a new category, but really they're just the same thing, 10% different. But this is like an actual new category. It's a new concept. It's a new use case. What advice would you have for people who are going to go down that path?
I think, and this, like, you got to be wary with giving advice. So I'll just share a narrative, and you can take your own views on how to kind of approach it. But I would probably say that, how are you, like, well, I've posed a question. How are you intentionally going to, like, go after creating a new category if it's not through the one of the 3 Ps, you know? And in my instance, I didn't set out to create a new category. It was through the journey of discovery and having our hypothesis tested and you know, in the first instance, somewhat disproven, that we then got to this space of where we are now. I think it's interesting, It's like, and I think we were talking about it off camera. You can build a business which is like serving an existing customer need in a unique way, and it's, you know, the 10% better comment that you just made. Or you can kind of have this like hypothesis or this thesis statement around like a much bigger problem, and maybe not even know how you're going to potentially solve the problem yet, but you know that there's this big problem, and then set off to try and go through discovery and talk to potential customers and clients around like what would solve that problem for them, and then just kind of build the thing off the back of the customer feedback and the way that you see the world, or the beliefs you have around the way that the world should work. And that's kind of what we've done, right? And then I've got super smart folks around me that have, you know, provided their feedback and guidance beyond the customer. And we've got a really great product team, which has allowed us to be super agile and nimble and responding to customer feedback and, you know, test things a lot. Like we do more testing. We do so much testing. You know, you'll be like, oh, we should do this. And then you, depending on if it's a two-way door or not, two-way door, meaning can you back out of the decision you're about to make? Because you got to like enter one-way doors much more carefully. But lots of the things that we would test would be always two-way doors. So like, oh, what do we think about this? Do we think that that's going to solve this problem? Well, let's just go and build like a minimum, not just an absolute shit minimum viable product, but a minimum like viable product which actually is like able to be utilized, put it in market, get that customer feedback, and then build upon it if it makes sense, or be like, okay, that was shit, throw it away. Like let's iterate.
And as a final kind of thought, what will success be for you and for Extraordinary?
What would success be for Extraordinary? I think, like, you know, again, just noting that like we're not a social good business, or we're wanting to see social good, but we're a socially capitalistic business, meaning that we've taken a bunch of capital and we need to return outcomes to our shareholders. And so we do want to be able to build that business which has that level of impact across multiple different geographies, which then through those things generates lots of economic outcomes for all of those that have participated and had the confidence and the trust to be able to make those upfront, very, very risky investments for us to be able to go and build this business. With respect to size and scale, like, I don't actually have a clear answer on that. You know, I think for me personally, I would love to be able to be involved with this business and take it from where we are today to, you know, the classic unicorn kind of comments, or even further than that. And we'll just continue, you know, there's lots of space in this category that we're creating. And so we're just going to continue on this mission for as long as possible, with, you know, as much kind of ambition and passion and productive ignorance to make sure that we're always willing to push the boundaries. And then, go and do the things and get cards into as many humans' hands as possible. Digital cards probably more than plastic cards, because screw plastic cards.
And it's magic to be able to do it on a little app on your phone.
And instantly. I love, like, that's probably just real quickly. That's like, in my view, such a massive advancement in payment technology. And it seems so simple, right? Like that you can get a card into someone's hand. And I think in our business, it takes like a minute, and it's like under 2 minutes that you can literally go from not having a card to having a card that can transact. It's just like ridiculously quick. Versus like, you know, you wait for the old days, not now because some banks do this digital thing now too, but, you know, the old days you'd be like, oh, can I get a new debit card? And they would have to cancel your old debit card, and you have to wait like 10 to 14 days for this new card to come. And you're like, how am I going to pay for shit, bro? Like, I need to, you know, get my coffee. So yeah, super psyched about that.
Super exciting. Well, it's been a joy to see you execute so far, and can't wait to see where you take it next. And thanks so much for sharing some of the story today. That's Steve Zinsli of Extraordinary. Kia ora.
Cheers, Simon. Thanks.
Thank you very much to Steve for coming on and sharing the story so far. Check out extraordinarypay.com for what they do. Thank you very much for having us along and listening. And thanks to everyone who helps make this happen, like our producer, Te Ahe Butler, and to Deal for supporting the podcast in 2025. E noho rā.